T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
On the 28th of June, 1969, police raided the Stonewall Inn, throwing 200 people out onto the streets and beating them. Motivated by anger over this vile mistreatment, the gay community decided to fight back, with Marsha P. Johnson throwing the first brick, triggering a week of protests and riots. News of the riots spread around the world, inspiring many more protests in the fight for equality. A month after the riots, the first openly gay march took place in New York, demanding equality. 50 years on, Pride marches are still carried out around the world to honour the pioneers who fought for the rights that we have today and continue their legacy. 1, 2, 3! Your Manchester!
It's Wednesday. It's live. Welcome to Your Manchester. It's Your Manchester.
Well, a very good evening to each and every one of you joining myself, Ms. Belinda Scandal, here in my lovely little studio for another episode of
Your Manchester.
I am joined tonight by my lovely co-host, Mr. Brandon McCaffrey. Have I pronounced it right?
Lovely before.
Pardon? Did I pronounce it right?
You did,
Yeah, good name. Where's the accent from?
It's from Belfast.
Lovely. Where's the tie from?
It's from my drawer.
Lovely. it's all gone remarkably well. We have got a jam-packed show for you this evening on Your Manchester. We really have. We are talking to guests galore. On the show tonight, you know, we normally just have like one or two guests. We thought, with it being LGBT plus History Month, I tried being clever then, remembering
I know.
all
If
of
you
them.
want to go for every single one, you go for it, but I don't pay for premiums, so I'm not available.
We've got on the show tonight, we've got Annie Wallace, we've got Austin-Behan, we've got Owain, is that right?
Owain.
Owain, thank you. Wyn Evans, we've got Tony Cooper, we are talking to the George House Trust, and we've got a special interview with one of the stars of It's a Sin, that is of course Nathaniel Hall. First of all though, how the heck are you?
I'm good. I mean, I'm loving being behind this screen. It's
There
like
you go, we're not
Rocky
really
Horror.
touching. It's good,
Touch
isn't it?
me.
I wish you could see how this screen works. It's really quite the interesting screen, to be honest with you.
I
It
mean,
really
technology
is.
these days.
Technology, it's all very, very scary. It's quite bizarre, quite spooky. You're looking very handsome, by the way.
Thank you. Do you know what? I like to dress up for the occasions, and sometimes that's just seeing you.
Well, it is an occasion. I tell you, it's the only time I put this on these days. It really is. Make sure you drink with brand up, brand on.
Brand on,
There
brand up.
you go. Lovely. Cheers, everybody. It's an extra long show tonight as well, I must just say. It's longer than the 45 minutes. And first of all, this evening, we want to speak to our former Lord Mayor, Mr. Carl Austin-Behan, who has joined us.
Hi.
I'm loving that top.
Well, I thought, as it's LGBT History Month, so 15 minutes ago, I thought, what should I wear? Because I was very rushed. And I thought, right, I'll just shove a few of the pin badges over the times. If you can see, we've got all sorts of different pin badges from across Greater Manchester of different events. And we've got the HIV, we've got U equals U, you've got all different, the fire service, you've got the National Health Service, you've got the ambulance service, you've got everyone in there. GHD, and you've even got an original LGF badge, if I find it there. Yeah, there's an LGF badge.
LGF? Eh?
Before it was LGBT Foundation.
There you go, sir.
Do you know what? I'm too young for these things.
Bit of history for you there. The LGF was known as the LGBT Foundation was the LGF before it started campaigning for trans rights.
And how far are we going back there?
We're only going back probably around about 4 or 5 years there, to be fair.
Oh, is that it? So when I was young.
Yeah.
Yes, that's quite right.
Prehistoric times were quite early.
So, Carl, we wanted to start with you today because you've done so much for the LGBT plus community. Why? What
Well,
gets you
do
so
you know what?
passionate about it?
I think for those of you who know my backstory, I was discharged, kicked out of the RAF back in 1997 for being gay. So I was one of the last people to get discharged back in 97, and that was only 23, 24 years ago. And the weird thing is, I actually could have gone to prison for 6 months. So it was a prison offence to be gay within the armed forces back in the back then. So I think once that had happened to me, and I got suspended for 6 months, and I wrote to Tony Blair, I wrote to my MP, I wrote to various people, and they were very much a case of no, these are the rules and regulations. And do you know what? I've got nothing against the armed forces. I have an issue with the government at the time and government until it was legalised. And it was only last year in 2020 when we had an official pardon by John Mercer to say that they realised that the government had screwed up, basically, and we apologise for the fact that we got rid of all these people who didn't make jobs. And I loved the Air Force, and I think that's where I got my passion from. I think the fact that I was doing a job. I'd signed up for 22 years. I managed, I'd rescued a pilot from an aircraft. I'd been in the Queen's Birthday Honours List back in 1996. And just because of the fact of my sexuality, I was discharged and could have gone to prison. So that's where my passion comes from. And that's why I'm still an activist today. And what was interesting was I was on a quiz show the other night, and I know you were on it, Belinda, with Misty and the boys over at the Goose to celebrate their third birthday and third anniversary. And I was quite surprised, if I'm honest, the fact that some people didn't know who Marsha P. Johnson was. The fact that people didn't realise the history of the village, the fact that people didn't realise who Alan Turing was. And it just made me realise about that. Do you know what? One thing that we need to keep doing is promoting LGBT history. And I know it's only 28 days of the year, but for the amount of history we've got, it needs to be 365 days of the year. So that's why I'm passionate.
How did you feel when you were discharged? How did that make you feel?
I went through a real bad point in my life.
Oh, we've lost you.
We seem to have lost your sound there, Flower.
Just a minute.
A second. Oh, we can't hear you. Can't hear you. You've gone off. So what we'll do is, whilst we're talking about history, let's bring in Tony D. Cooper. Now, Tony, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
How are you?
Now, we're going back a while, because we were talking only recently how you remember how it was illegal to be gay. I mean, this is in...
Well, not so much that it was illegal to be gay, but certainly when the age of consent was changed, when it was illegal to be, gay under 21, I certainly remember that. And, I certainly remember the problems of having, when I was 20 and I had a 19-year-old boyfriend. So the problems that caused. But yeah, it's not that long ago.
But what was that like, though? Describe how you'd be able to emote and show your emotions. And did you feel like you was always clamping down on yourself?
In normal everyday life, yes. But we had the village. We had an escape, so we had somewhere to go. But you've got to remember, even on the village, I remember coming out of the Union, and the Union was one of the places to go then. And we had the Jesus bus parked outside. And it literally is what I say. It was a big Jesus bus full of Christians stood at the doorway handing people leaflets saying that you were going to die of AIDS and you were going to go to hell. And with graphic images of people that were, in hospital with HIV and AIDS. And they were handing you that as you came out.
And I suppose one of the questions is, being your authentic self, for some people, that's being camp, isn't it? How was that kind of allowed to be seen? Well,
the thing is that we still have the same problem now, that the models that you see in television, in everything else, is that camp model. That's the acceptable face of homosexuality, is that camp model. The Larry Graysons, etc., etc., the John Inmans.
Yeah.
Those were the acceptable faces of gay. Oh, he's a bit camp. It's a bit of that.
And it was it was kind of hidden within television. And one man was very cleverly letting it drip into our subconsciousness, and his name was Tony Warren. Let's have a look at this just to see how it was very cleverly done.
But TV was broadcasting to the whole family, so any expression of a gay sensibility had to operate in code. One gay man's sensibility was beaming its way into the nation's living rooms without the public even suspecting it.
Hello. Off to what you laughingly call work, are you, love?
Yes, love, but we'll be finished by the time you've emptied the slops. Ta-ta.
Common as muck. I don't know how we talk to him.
Coronation Street was the creation of the late Tony Warren, a young scriptwriter at Granada who'd been open about being gay since long before decriminalisation.
He was just a barrel of fun. He had a tremendous liking for strong women.
Warren spent much of his childhood with his mother and grandmother while the men were away at war. But there were other strong women he was influenced by too. He would go out on the burgeoning Manchester gay scene and turn the drag queens he met into ever more heightened female characters.
Betty, have you sold that sideboard to Hilda Ogden? No. Right. I'll soon sort Hilda Ogden out.
Bet was a combination.
Come on, then, there might be a fight.
Of all the things that Tony loved. The strength, the vulnerability, the comedy. That was Bear.
You never was able to talk the Queen's English, was you, Hilda?
No, she just shouts it, top of her flaming voice. She was in her head siren it war. Right, Betlin, stop.
Coronation Street's flamboyant women didn't just appeal to millions of mostly straight British viewers. They struck a very special chord with a generation of young gay men.
Not on your Nelly.
In visual material, especially, television and film, there's a streak of camp that resonates with gay men on a completely silent and unconscious level that is not received from society. You can grow up on a farm in the middle of Norfolk having no social contact, and at 13 years old you could be sitting there being thrilled by Bette Lynch and thrilled by Joan Collins. I was sitting in a house in Swansea. I had no idea that The Wizard of Oz was a camp classic. Those words didn't exist. I watched it and loved her. I loved those strong women in the soaps. What is it? One day we will understand. If you're writing Coronation Street, literally you'll be on your best when you're writing Bette Lynch. Len Fairclough could have come in, you're rattling the dialogue off. You've kind of got to raise your game when it comes to Bette. So actually, in some ways, when we're admiring camp, we're admiring the best. We're admiring stuff that's had more work put into it, more thought put into it. Camp isn't a superficial thing. It's really, really profound. It's a profound connection between men and women.
It is indeed a profound connection. Talking about soaps and everything like this, and obviously we had some pictures there from some of the bars as they were. You worked in bars most of your life, and you also did a bit of entertaining back in the day as well. What was the reason for you getting into the entertainment side, first of all?
You're naughty, Belinda.
I've not put the picture up.
You'll die if you do. Do you know what? Because I had a pub and I couldn't afford to put entertainment on. We were struggling. It was hard work. We couldn't afford to put the entertainment on. So that was it. And then I ended up earning more money than the artists that I was putting on. So that's the way it works.
There you go, that's a life.
So you've done it properly then, haven't you? Right then, speaking and staying with entertainment, everybody, there is a programme. Thank you for the moment, by the way, Tony. We'll be back with you in a little while.
Thank you.
There is a programme on at the moment that is literally, I think it's the most streamed programme on Channel 4 ever. It's a Russell T Davies one.
I mean, it's going to be brilliant if you know he's written it.
Well, it's got to be, hasn't it? It literally has. And one gentleman that's due to make his starring role in this wonderful 5-hour wonderfulness, let's just call it that. Good. I've watched the whole thing.
If you don't cry, you have no heart.
I know, I am giving nothing away. But let's have a word with our guest, Nathaniel Hall. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hello, hi, how are you doing?
How many interviews is this today that you've done?
Oh, I think this is number 4 today. So, yeah.
That's not too bad.
No, it's not too bad.
You're taking part in a programme that actually, in its very context, is extremely close to your heart.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I've lived with HIV since I was, 2 weeks before my 17th birthday, I was diagnosed with HIV. So yeah, landing a role in It's a Sin, which is just the most, like you say, the most talked about drama at the minute. It's insane, how the impact that it's had and the conversations that it's sparking has been amazing for me as somebody who's lived with HIV for nearly 18 years and someone who's a passionate and proud HIV activist.
Was it heartbreaking to sort of step back in time but realise that the issues that you were addressing then are still not prevalent, but they're still there for people to look for?
Yeah, I think, lots of people ask me, was it hard to film? What was it like filming it? And actually it wasn't that difficult. Reading the script was tough when I first got it. And when we had the table read through with everything, we knew we were onto something amazing with the script. And we all took it very, very seriously, that we wanted to honor these stories and the lives lost and the people who have lost people as well to HIV and AIDS. But actually it really hit home when I watched it. I streamed it, or I'd actually watched it before it was broadcast. I was very lucky. And then but I watched it with my boyfriend when it was put onto All 4 a couple of weeks ago. I watched all 5, and that weekend felt very, very heavy. Felt very fortunate. If I was born 16 years earlier, I won't give any spoilers away, but those people that have seen it, I would be Colin Morris Jones. I wouldn't be here. So that lay very heavy with me, that I was very fortunate to be born when I was in the age of medication, and also now able to have sex with my boyfriend without a condom is incredible. If you're on effective medication, you can't pass on the virus. So yeah, actually watching it back was when it was really tough, and I realized that it was opening up maybe a slightly unhealed wound for across the LGBT community, and that a lot of people were like, oh yes, there's some unresolved trauma here that we need to maybe get out and collectively grieve and and remember those lives.
Now, we're going to ask you about your character in a minute, but before then, the stigma that perhaps your character would feel for maybe he does, maybe doesn't having HIV compared to you as Nathaniel, is the stigma the same? I lived with my HIV diagnosis in secret for about 15 years, so I'm not going to brush up and be like, I was diagnosed in 2003 and everything was fine. The stigma and the shame of the diagnosis is very heavy, and it's the most stigmatized illness virus in the world. And it took me a long, long time to work through that and to work through all those feelings and the psychological impact of that. I think, it almost doesn't compare to what people must have felt like in the 1980s. If you think of the headlines, the vilification of gay men at that time, I can't imagine what it must have felt like to go through that. I mean, I was born in 1986, which is the year Donald appears in It's a Sin. So there's a strange parallel. But I think, and Donald's an actor, I'm an actor. There's some parallels with my own life. But the fact that Donald has to hide his sexuality as an actor, otherwise he won't get roles. And that's in episode 3. That's what we find out, that he's actually getting the roles over Richie, who's the lead, because I think maybe Donald can mask his gayness a little bit more than Richie can, and so he's getting the jobs that Richie wants to get. And that to look in a comparison to me now as very, very openly. Open about my sexuality.
You've been doing as well, is it? You've also written a play that's just been released over the past couple of months.
Yeah, so my solo show first time came out in 2018, and then went to the Edinburgh Fringe in 2019, and then was on tour before Miss Rona came on the scene, and it interrupted all our lives. You know, I was like, I was talking about another pandemic, and you've just come and interrupted. Excuse me, but. Yeah, that was part of my journey from going from, you know, in 2017 when I was still living in secret. I decided that I needed to tell my family. I wanted to go very public and very open about my diagnosis to really smash through that shame and stigma and change the narrative about HIV, to normalize it, you know, to put a new face to it, because obviously for a lot of people, and particularly maybe not in the gay community, but maybe outside the LGBT community, you know, people might still think that it's like the 1980s, that if you get, you know, they might still see those emaciated figures, and those, you know, really awful things that people went through, and not understand that HIV has changed. So I was like, I need to do something about this. And I'm white, I'm middle class, you know, I walk through the world with a lot of privilege as well, you know, so actually it's safe for me to do so. And so I thought, yeah, let's do something. So I did what any self-respecting person would do, and you know, play out on stage for hundreds of people every night.
Amazing. Now, so then you've touched a bit on it, but tell us a bit more about your character in It's a Sin.
Yeah, so Donald, for that, I try not to give any spoilers away for those that are watching weekly.
That's the tricky thing, isn't it?
Yeah, the binge story week by week.
I think it's torn the country apart. Most of them have either watched an episode and are keeping with it weekly, or everyone's watched it all. So go on, give as many spoilers as you wish to.
Well, so Donald appears in episode 3, which is out this Friday. Like I say, Donald's an actor. He keeps bumping into Richie, who's the lead, played by Ollie Alexander, at castings. They're obviously put up for very similar roles, but Donald seems to be getting the parts, but there's a little spark of something there, and they meet in the Brewers, and Richie realizes that he's one of us, you know, Donald is one of us, and they hit it off, and they go into a really beautiful little relationship, but very sadly, that's not to be. Donald is one of the boys that goes home. We don't really find out what happens to Donald.
Yeah, it's true that actually, because we don't actually see maybe that's the second season, maybe.
Well, it's something to say in the acting industry is that if something does happen like that, they always go, "Oh, they went home," and that's still said nowadays.
It is. Well, I text Russell and I said, well, we don't actually find out what happens to Donald, so maybe there's a second season where he does come back.
Season, Donald's the lead character now.
Exactly.
He did a second one of Queer as Folk, so why not?
Yeah.
Right? Why not? You say that you get into a nice relationship with the main character, but however, it's a bit more than that, because you kind of had to do scenes I suppose most of us would reserve for dark light.
Yes, this is true. Yeah, there was some sex scenes involved. I watched the first episode when it went out live with my parents. And if anyone's seen the first episode, it's pretty out there. This is the man that introduced the heterosexual world to gay rimming, in the late 1990s. So, but my mum said
introduced me to it. To be fair.
But my mum said, I hope you don't do anything like that in your scenes. I was like, why do you think I'm not watching it with you?
So just before we let you go then, where can people find this wonderful programme? Like I need to ask, but let's just pretend that we're not all into it like we all are.
So where can we find It's a Sin?
Yeah.
Yeah, so It's a Sin is on Channel 4, and it's available to stream the 5 episodes on all 4 as well. And if you've not watched it, where have you been? Because literally the entire nation is watching it.
I was walking through Bolton the other day and was like, seeing where the protest was, and went, I'm going to lie down. This is it. This is my moment.
I went the next day because I was one of these ones that watched the episode and thought, I can't wait till next Friday. This is absolutely doing me. I didn't just watch it. I went the next week down to where you filmed outside the thingy
with a record shop.
Pink Palace. I went
Pink Palace, yeah.
It doesn't look the same as it does in the programme, but that's glamorisation.
That's one thing that made me laugh loads. Sat there going like, we're in London, and when you're from Manchester, you go like, that is not London.
Well, it's
Stop lying yourself.
Clampdown Records, which they didn't do any set dressing on Clampdown Records because it just looks wonderful. It's like it's not changed since the 1960s, has it? So
Rundown Records, as I used to call it. Nathaniel Hall, thank you so much for your time today. Amazing to speak to you. Thank you so much. Amazing. All right then, everybody. Now, you might be sat at home, you might be thinking, well, I'll watch It's a Sin, or you might be thinking, what else could I watch that's along the sort of LGBT plus vein? Well, one lady that can answer that very question for you is our very gorgeous Hayley. Let's find out.
Hi, I'm Hayley and welcome to this week's On The Box. Now, the first thing I'd love to recommend is Lesflix. Now, Lesflix is an online ethical platform and it aims to increase awareness and increase accessibility to lesbian and bisexual films. So you can find out more at lesflix.com. Over on a more mainstream platform on Netflix, the fantasy series The Shannara Chronicles.
It has begun.
Adventures, war and evil that occur throughout the history of 4 lands. Now there are numerous strong female roles and leads in it, and also gay and bisexual women are portrayed in a strong light as well. So top marks there. Now, Pearl Mackie from Doctor Who, Lucy Fallon from Corrie, they've unveiled an LGBTQ horror series called Sour Hall, and that is available at the moment on Audible. Also, if you fancy something light-hearted, on Netflix there is a series, actually there's 2 series now so far, of bonding.
Welcome to my office.
You told me you were a 911 operator.
Yeah, I lied. I'm a full-service fantasy provider. All I need is someone to help me clean up, be my bodyguard, you know, like the Kevin Costner to my Whitney Houston.
Kevin Costner gets shot at the end.
Do you trust me?
How much?
Now, it's really light-hearted. It follows Tiff, who is moonlighting as a student and also as a dominatrix with her gay best friend. Over on those cobbles, Corrie have actually confirmed that there will be a romance in the air, and it will be between Nina and Asher. So I'm excited to see how that unfolds over there too. Now, that's it from me. You have a really good week. Remember, stronger together, we'll get through all this. Bye.
Oh,
Thank you,
Hayley. There we are. Some programmes to watch there.
No.
Now, you're one of them bisexual gentlemen, aren't you?
I know, right. We put the B in the LGBT.
Do you feel you're represented?
Do you know what? I actually do.
No.
No, I put this on Facebook recently. So, personally, whenever you watch a show, and there is quite a few bisexual characters out there, don't get me wrong, but it's they're either cheating or they die, or it's a girl and it's always a girl action for the straight male fantasy and they're clearly the producers. And I'm going like, where are the actual bisexual boys that deal with this as an issue, that go, I like girls and guys, what is this problem? Because I grew up not knowing that was an option until I was 18.
Well, that's not necessarily because of your sexuality, it's probably because of where you're from.
No, I mean, it is from where I'm from. Yeah, we are 20 years in the past.
Yeah, where are you from?
From Northern Ireland, otherwise known as Nazi Germany at times.
Leave it now. Right, okay. So the the next lady we're going to speak to, because you're an actor as well.
I am.
Yes, well, we've got a BAFTA-nominated actress joining us now.
I won an award once.
Did you? What was it?
Best actor in short film.
I won an award once. It was the best dog in the show.
I believe that.
Right, okay, let's meet this beautiful lady then. This is the gorgeous Miss Annie Wallace. Hello, Annie.
Hello.
How are you?
Hello.
How's life for you?
Oh,
we haven't spoke for years.
It's what, sorry?
We haven't spoke for years.
Well, no, because we normally bump into each other at entertainment venues.
Yes.
But
Not mentioning it
there's
because
been
we
no
don't do plugging.
entertainment apart from that bloody box in the corner. That's been all that we've got. We've had our television, and that's been it. Yeah, no, I've been fine. It's we had the horrible lockdowns when we weren't filming anything, and that eased in August.
Yeah.
And since August, we have been filming Hollyoaks, and because of the fairly strict anti-COVID measures at work, thankfully we've not had to shut down at any point. Although
I was going to ask you how you got around that, though. How's filming been? How's it been different?
Okay, so we don't have our own dressing rooms anymore. We are allocated a dressing room on the day, and before we go into the dressing room, the room is antiviral fogged, and every surface is wiped. And then when we leave, and if someone else is coming into the room, the same thing happens. So there's a team of disinfectants following us around. Our clothes are fogged as well, our costumes. We have to do our own makeup and hair. As you can see, Sally's hair is getting a little bit on the long side.
Looks gorgeous, Flower. Gorgeous.
We can't. Well, thank you. It's proving difficult, shall we say, because as well as there being no hairdressers, there's no hairdressing at work, and there's no makeup, so we have to do it all ourselves. We can style ourselves, but I can't cut my hair myself, or else I'd end up looking, I don't know, like someone with one of those Mohicans or something horrendous. So we're not going to go. we're not going to go there.
I actually set you the challenge to do that, Annie. I expect a Mohican within the next few weeks.
Buzz cut.
It could be a character choice.
Number one, all the way. Yeah. So, yeah, it's extremely on the doubly safe side. We wear masks all around the building. The masks only come off when we actually shoot our scenes, and then when we're finished, we go home. So there's no green room to sit and socialize and chat with your castmates. It's turned the place a little bit clinical, and doesn't feel as friendly as it did, but it's needs must.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Because at the moment, we have to do whatever we have to do to continue making lots of lovely television for everyone.
Which you're doing. But I wanted to ask you about trans rights, because you have been such an instrumental person with this. You really, really have. First of all, let's go back to your youth and how you feel it's progressed to where you are now.
Well, my youth was the 1970s. Now, we're talking about a time when, as Tony said, things were very, very different. Yes. LGBT people were all put in the same basket together. There was no such thing as LGBT people. It was just gay. Trans wasn't even a word. It was transgender. It was you're transsexual or transvestite. And both of those were terrible things.
Yeah.
So, when you grow up with that kind of stigma and you think you could belong to that subset, it's very scary. And I think the groundbreaking thing that happened for me was when Julia Grant did her BBC One television series, the documentary showing her transition and her establishing of her business in Manchester and everything. And that I watched on a small black and white television. I think there's kids probably watching It's a Sin in the same way. Very, very quiet with your head quite close to speakers so that parents don't know what you're watching.
Absolutely.
And because it's so amazing that it's actually there and it's something that you go, oh my God, this is something, I think this is what I am. So, of course, the wonderful Julia and I became very good friends later. The late Julia Grant, complete groundbreaker for trans people in Britain. So she was my first kind of role model that made me think, well, this is actually a possible thing, rather than just a headline in a newspaper, which is always kind of glaring and horrible and othering. That's a good word for it, isn't it?
I like that word anyway.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was the kind of youth, and then didn't tell anyone, kept my mouth shut. I remember telling my mum once when I was 8 years old. So we're talking early 70s. And she just hit me.
Really?
belted me and said, "Don't you ever say that ever again," and that I never did.
Of course, things turned around for you. I mean, you got this major breakthrough role, and I say it quite strongly, breakthrough role in Hollyoaks. Till then, it was very young people tackling, you know, the occasional this and that issue. You came in, you changed it all around. How was your first day there, though?
Oh, it's just lovely. It's just lovely. It's such a lovely place to work. And I think that anyone who comes into the show will see the same thing. You come in and they're very nice to you, and they say, "Oh, this is what you're doing. This is where you're going. Can I help?" All this kind of thing. You film what you have to film, and then you go home. And every day, well, pretty much every day has been very similar to the first. It's just a very warm and supportive atmosphere, especially when it's storylines that actually have some depth to them, which such as anything to do with the LGBT community is usually handled pretty well. We have 2 non-binary actors in the show now, and they're going to be touching on that very soon, I believe. But yes, well, Hollyoaks took me on at a time when there was a swirl around the idea that, gosh, trans people might actually be actors as well as, you know, as well as other things. My goodness, can they act? So
well, this is what Russell T Davies came out with the comment a few weeks ago that only gay actors should play gay characters. Do you feel that's the same with trans people?
You see, it's difficult for this one. I think for trans people, I think it depends on the context of the actual thing that you're doing. I think if the program is featuring or dealing with a character who is post-transition, I believe you should always have a trans person in that role. Something like The Danish Girl, where Eddie Redmayne played a character who, for most of the film, was playing Einar, not Lily. I know it got a lot of backlash, but I didn't see the backlash in that because it was about someone who was finding himself. So casting someone, I mean, can you imagine if they'd cast me in that role, for instance, and they said, "Yeah,
for one."
Well, for 3/4 of that film, you're going to be playing Einar, so you're going to be playing a man in that role. I'm sure there'd be trans people who'd be willing to do it, but I think it would be quite difficult and quite painful actually to do that. So I think it depends entirely on the context of the part and the person. It's a case-by-case basis for me. But if it's a post-transition thing, if it's something about a trans person, then it's I believe that there are plenty of trans actors out there who can do that.
Absolutely. For the time, Annie, stay with us, but we are going to move over to another pioneering actor now. One of our patrons, Mr. Daniel Brocklebank. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Good evening. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. We're talking about pioneering roles here. A gay vicar must have been. Did you get any backlash?
Initially, but I mean, there are quite a high number of gay clergy, and once we were, representing that group, it settled down a bit. Yeah.
Now I've got to ask you a question because I'm dying to ask you, and I've been dying to ask this question for a while. Perhaps we could breathe them slides up, please. Thank you. One very important question. Now, I want you to put yourself into your character's mind, okay? And I want to throw these options at you. If you were to marry somebody within your program, would it be Todd? Would it be Paul? Which would you choose?
Well, I mean, neither of them are particularly good for him, are they? Let's face it. Does it have to be one of them?
Yeah, but a one-night stand,
I mean, you've had several of them with our Todd.
No, never, no.
No, have you not?
He's very well behaved. No, very well behaved. Yeah.
It's not like being back home at all.
Outrageous. How's life been for you being a gay man? First of all, has it been difficult as a gay actor to get roles? Or how was it for you?
It's changed over the years. I started working mid-90s, 94. and things were quite different then, you know, socially, legally. And that obviously affected work. It certainly affected work when I came out publicly. It affected work in America massively. But now, it's very different. It's very different. You are able to be out and not worry about it affecting your sort of castability. Yeah, which is great.
Yeah. So if you were looking for a particular part, if you were casting for a part, would you cast and always agree that casting a gay man in the role would be the right thing to do to play a gay part?
Okay, well, I sort of agree with what Annie said, really. It depends on the context. I mean, an actor by definition is somebody that pretends to be someone they're not. Yeah. So, you know, but somebody who is gay would understand, you know, what it's like to be gay. So therefore it might make sense to cast somebody who's had similar life experiences to the character. So it does depend on the context, I think.
And your story coming out, how was that? Was that difficult for you?
Well, it was sort of, mid 90s. I came out to my family in 95 and then came out publicly in 98. And things were very different. I grew up, you know, with Section 28, social attitudes being different to how they are now. At times it was very difficult. Yeah. I'm very pleased to see that the younger generations now have it so much easier.
But do you think the younger generation need to retain the knowledge and the history of what it is to be LGBT?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thrilled that they don't have to face the same level of prejudice that my generation and previous did. But it's really important to understand how we got to where we are now.
Because a lot of the youngsters that we asked, you know, last year when we did our programme last year for Pride, we asked them what Pride means to them. And, excuse me, most of them said, it's a party. And it kind of stops there. And you kind of feel, as an older person, that you want to reach out to them and explain to them why they're allowed to have this party.
Yeah, absolutely. It is great that it now is a party, but I remember when it was a political march and, you know, so I think it's part of our history. It's part of how we got to where we are now. And I think, I think it's really important for the younger generations to know that.
Yeah, let's bring Annie back in for a second then. Annie, if I said to you, what's the importance of Pride? What would you say?
As much as a coming together as anything, the sheer coming together in numbers is within its own right a protest of sharing experiences, sharing stories, sharing space, and sharing history. A lot. We have to remember we're very urban, LGBT plus people, and we like to think we're really switched on and we know everything and whatnot. Well, I don't know everything. I learned a lot from It's a Sin, although I thought I knew stuff. It was that was an education to me as well. So there's a lot of people out there, such as Northern Ireland, where the community is disparate. There's people in little enclaves in small towns who maybe know one or two people. And it's only the coming together of the community on these days, on these events, when knowledge is shared, experiences are shared. You know, in the days when we could hug people, which will return. It's an important thing. In my mind, it's not just a party. It's not just a pop concert. Especially not just a pop concert. And I would really vehemently say that for my own reasons. But it's a much more important cultural aspect that happens annually. And it's important that it happens annually. And it's a bringing together of people with very different outlooks on life.
Dan, do you remember your first Pride?
Sorry?
Yeah, I do, very clearly. 97.
How was that for you? Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was totally different to how it is now. You know, the streets were lined with people who were against us, whereas now, when you do the parade, you know, it's lined with love. And to see that progression in the 20 odd years since I came out is phenomenal.
And when you were celebrating your first Pride, what were you there celebrating?
Well, I think at that age, just being comfortable with who I was, you know, being around people who were like me. So, you know, it gives, like Annie said, that opportunity of togetherness.
Yeah. Tony Cooper was around, I do believe. Are you there, Tony? There we are.
There
Tony, explain to us, explain to us what Pride was for you, because you were there without putting any finger on it right at the very beginning.
All the way back when. Yeah, I mean, back in the late 80s, late 80s, 1990. And it was, the thing is, it was very much then about raising funds for the hospital, raising funds for to help people with HIV and AIDS, for the hospices, to raise money for, for the basic things like bedding and, TVs in their room and fridges for medication. And it was very much about that. So for way back when, it wasn't so much, the political side of it and getting gay rights was there, but the main thing was helping raise money for our friends who were, still at the end of the late 80s, they were still dying in their droves.
Yeah.
So that was the important thing for us.
Yeah, let's bring Carl in for a second here, if everything's working. Carl, are you there?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me now?
You've done so much for... You've done so much for so many different LGBT situations. Obviously, becoming Lord Mayor was a turning point. Entering into that world, just moving on from the Pride situation for a second, entering into that world, how did that make you feel, knowing you were the first?
Right, and I think this goes back to, I know I got cut off earlier before with technical issues, but I look at when I became Lord Mayor of Manchester in 2016. I remember being on that, doing that Pride parade in 2001, and literally marching from one end of the city to this end of the city, and I was wearing a pair of hot pants and a sash as Mr. Gay UK. 15 years later. Yeah, that was me. 15 years later, I'm wearing the chain of office. I'm the Lord Mayor of Manchester, the first citizen of the city, for representing 800,000 people. And you know what? That made me feel so proud. Not proud as in a tick box, but proud in the fact that where we've come with equality, and the fact that I was willing to put myself there to sort of support that, because up until then, the Lord Mayor had always been someone, been on the council 30, 35 years. If you looked at the pictures in the town hall, you'd think it was something like Thomas the Tank Engine. It's Fat Controller out of Thomas the Tank Engine. No disrespect to any previous Lord Mayors.
You've said it
no. Hey, I've got nothing to lose. But I look at it and I think, do you know what? I love Nathaniel and I love everything he's done to raise awareness. And I listen to what everyone's tonight said, and also I have a massive thing about the fact of I remember what I was like when I first did manage to come out in the village. I mean, I've been out in the village for over 30 years. A lot of it, the first 5 years were hidden because of being in the Air Force. But you know what? I think we've got to respect young people as well, because unless we give them the history, they're not going to know the history. And also, I've been there. I've been in venues where they look at you as if to say, "What the hell are you doing here? This is our space." Well, if it wasn't for us people who are 44, 45, 46, 48, I'm 49 on Friday. If it wasn't for people like us, if it wasn't for people before you, you wouldn't be where you are now. And I think that's what LGBT History Month is about. It's about sharing knowledge and it's about educating. And watching It's a Sin, I feel very passionate. I've not binge watched it yet, but I look at it I look at it in two ways. When I used to come back from being in the Air Force, where it was illegal before I was kicked out, I was a Richie when I could be myself. When I was in the Air Force, I was a Colin. And if you look at those two characters, they are completely different. And that, to me, is about the fact that that's where I was when I was between 17 to 24. I had to play a double, treble, quadruple life just to please society. And I think that's why it's important. I think that's what I really love about this program is we can have this debate and we can have this conversation, and you bring people on to have these conversations. So thank you for giving me
I put this
space.
program together for one simple reason. I know it's LGBT History Month, but LGBT History Month. But for me, the stories that you get are always going to be knowledge, and they're always going to be information. And I'm hoping that if any of the younger generation are watching, they're almost treating this not as a history lesson, but as a knowledge lesson. And I think that's what's so important. One gentleman that's popped up on our screens a lot over the last few years with his drumming. Oh, I love the drumming. Is our Owain Evans. I spent one Cardiff Pride with this gentleman, and
we'll love Cardiff.
Cardiff, it was fabulous. But I mean, we've talked a lot. Pronounce his name. Can I just
Owain.
Owain.
It's like wine with an O in front of it, darling.
This is
Just
what
think
I
of a wine.
said. I was like,
go.
wine with an O, and I was like, we'll have a glass. And
Well,
she's
we can
like,
do. I
what?
can remember that. Owain. I mean, Cardiff is a totally different thing to Manchester. But I mean, how was growing up LGBT in Cardiff?
Well, I spent a lot of time in Cardiff and I lived there for many, many years, but I actually grew up in a place called Ammanford, which is 56 miles west from Cardiff. And, you know, I grew up in it's an ex-mining town, and I grew up in a very kind of working class family, and we never had very much money. And in those kinds of towns, you know, there simply weren't other LGBT people as far as I was concerned. You know, it was like, and I know that some people watching this now probably feel the same. You know, this is a familiar kind of feeling, right? When you're growing up, you feel like you're the only gay in the village or whatnot. But it definitely felt like that. And it took me a really long time to get to a stage where I suppose I was, you know, comfortable with myself, and that I actually was like accepting of the fact that, okay, this is me, I am gay. But that probably didn't happen until I was, you know, 17, 18. And then I got a job in Cardiff and I moved there for work, and I started seeing what was a gay scene, really. There was a really small gay scene in Swansea, actually, which I did kind of dip my toe into. But I didn't spend a lot of time there. And what made it even more strange for me, I suppose, is that my... and I don't mean to kind of apply any stereotypes here, but it is how I experienced it, so that this is how I will describe it in my way. Yeah. There are lots of mechanics in my family, you know. I was always around cars and motorbikes, and when I was younger, I used to ride motorbikes, you know, and then I was a drummer, and I was playing in rugby clubs around the kind of Swansea valleys every Friday and Saturday night, you know. So it was a very kind of masculine kind of environment, I suppose. So I think that like it was almost like there were layers of something being put on top of me, you know, like squeezing me down over the years. So, but I also consider myself really lucky, you know, because my family loved me and I had really good friends. So the coming out experience for me was difficult, yes, but a lot easier than it is for so many people I know.
A lot of people say that the coming out is difficult because of what you expect people to instantly feel. You expect them to feel the negativity. And actually, a lot of people say when they tell their friends, and this is me reaching out to other people, they already knew.
Oh yeah, I remember telling my best mate, he was the first person I told out of anyone, and his reaction was literally went, "Do you fancy me?" And I went, "No," and he went, "And why not? Am I not good enough?" And I was like, what?
Well, one gentleman, Owain.
Oh,
I've pronounced his name for you, just bring him back in.
Wine.
We'll get there.
That has really, really modelled himself on you and finds you an absolute inspiration is, where's Owain gone now? Bring him, keep back in. Is our lovely weather gentleman, and we expect a critique straight after this, Owain.
Good evening, Mel. Good evening, Brandon. Hello there, everyone, and welcome to this week's weather forecast.
with me, Paul Rudd. And I have to say, this week I am rocking the suit in homage to the wonderful Owain Evans, who's on the show. Loving your work, Owain. Hope to get to meet you soon, one day. All right, let's have a look at this week's weather outlook. Here's my weather maps. Take a look at this. Thursday is looking sunny with the temperatures of 6. Friday is looking cloudy with the temperatures of 6. And come Saturday, this is when the temperatures are going to drop. Saturday is looking cloudy with the temperatures of 3. And come Sunday, it will snow with the temperatures of 3 as well. So there will be a few inches, but you know how we like that, lads. That's it for this week's weather. After every storm, there is a beautiful rainbow. And I have to say a big congratulations to Karen and Gary on the birth of their baby boy. And now it's time to hand over back to the studio to the fabulous, as always, Belinda Scandal and the new boy on the block, Brandon McCaffrey, for this week's episode of Your Manchester.
Hey. How did he do? How was that?
Is that 10 out of 10, darlings. I loved it. He's great, isn't he? I loved his suit as well. A highly accurate weather forecast, which of course, darlings.
Fantastic. Good. This is what I'd like to know. If you know and he's right, we're doing well.
Yeah,
you're right there. All we need is the day, what it's going to do, and how warm it's going to be, so we know whether to wear a coat or a parka. That's all that's important.
So I completely agree, you know, it's so weird the way the technology is. We won't talk about weather too much, darlings, but technology has moved on so much over the years, you know, with weather forecasting and meteorology. But essentially, all people want to know is, do I need a sturdy shoe underfoot? You know, how much freeze hold do I need, darling? And am I going to need an umbrella? Is that all we need to know?
The big coat or the little one? What are we doing?
That's exactly it. Owain, please stay with us. We're going to have a big discussion in just a few minutes' time with all our guests, everybody. We want to see about the future and obviously, you know, perhaps where we can go, what we can do. In the meantime, though, one company has just done wonders. They're called the George House Trust, and one of their representatives joins us here now. This is Darren. Good evening, Darren. How are you?
Hello.
Hiya, thanks for having me.
You're all right. Perhaps first of all, to anybody that doesn't know, what is the George House Trust?
George House Trust is a charity that provides support to people living with HIV. Our kind of focus is ensuring that people live confidently and healthily. So we do all the support and offer all the support that they may need to live the best life they can.
Yeah. And why was this so important to set up?
Well, it was set up back in the 80s, and it was really important at the time when AIDS was, as we've heard already tonight, taking people, and it massively impacted our community. And people got together to challenge the way that people were being treated, that we're really seeing through It's a Sin, because people were not dying with dignity, and people also needed support, someone to talk to. So Manchester AIDS Line was established, and then that grew into George House Trust over the years.
Yeah. So HIV, is it still with us, or has it gone away now?
It's definitely still with us. So there's been great progress made. So people living with HIV can expect to live the same length of time as somebody without it these days. And when you're on effective treatment, you can't pass it on if you're undetectable. So we've made progress. But the reality is, we've got 6,000 people living with HIV in Greater Manchester, 105,000 across the country, and people are still contracting HIV every year. We've got bold ambitions. By 2030, we will end new transmission of HIV, which is really exciting. It's got government behind it, all the HIV charities, all the prevention organisations. We're all working towards that, but we will still have HIV with us.
And I think the important word that you used there was the word living, because this isn't a death sentence anymore, is it?
No, absolutely not. So I think what It's a Sin is showing us is a very real perspective from a point in time, but actually now you will live your life to the full. You can do anything that anybody without HIV can do, jobs that are open to you. It's really, really a manageable condition, a long-term condition, but a manageable one.
So how would people, you know, do they get an illness, a cough, a cold? How do they know if they've got it? How can they know if they've got it?
You get a test, pure and simple. There's just get tested, right? We need to remove the stigma around testing, and it's HIV testing week this week. So there's loads of stuff. You can go to gmpash.org.uk to find out more information about testing, but get tested. No, it's the best method of prevention is knowing your HIV status.
You see, I was stupid. Well, not stupid, but I didn't get tested until a few years ago, and it was Tony. Where's Tony? Can we bring Tony back in? Tony, perhaps you remember you took me to what was GAY, and you forced me to have my first test, and I was petrified that it was going to be this, it was going to be that, it was going to be that. Do you remember that, Tony?
I do. And we stood outside and had our pictures up with our finger.
Yeah, because it's as simple as that, isn't it? It's not invasive at all, you know, they're not taking pints of blood. It's a pinprick.
Yeah.
And getting that pinprick, if I'm right, Darren, it's an obvious stage to rescue you from the inevitable, I suppose, is it?
Yeah. If you are living with HIV, the sooner you know it, the sooner you're on effective treatment, the better you're going to be, yeah? So the most important thing is to know. The support's there. You've got charities like George House Trust to provide that kind of well-being advice. People are referred to us newly diagnosed and also later on when they've maybe been living with HIV for years. But there's loads of support around you for you. So just have the test and know either way.
There's so many more doing it at the minute. I've seen quite a few people on Facebook and online, a lot of friends of mine who wouldn't be the usual type to go out and do it, who because of it's a sin and it being HIV testing week have gone out and got a kit and are doing it at home.
And if you do get, if you have got HIV, if you're HIV positive, what does that mean for your life?
Well, from us, it means that you can live the same life as anybody else. We just need to educate people that things have changed. There's still stigma around, but you will be taking medication, maybe one tablet, maybe two, maybe three, maybe more. It depends on what regime you're on. But also...
what do the tablets do?
Well, they make sure that the amount of HIV that's in your blood is reduced, and so it's what we call undetectable. So basically it manages the amount of HIV in your blood and stops that increasing, and that's what you go to the hospital for on a regular basis, maybe every 6 months, maybe less for some people, to keep that in check and make sure that everything's okay.
And if you've got HIV, can you transmit it still?
Well, if you're undetectable, so that means the amount of HIV in your body can't be picked up by a test, then you can't pass it on through sex, no. So that's why George House Trust really focuses on the undetectable equals untransmittable message, because we need people to know that. So yeah, it's a real kind of a big thing in progression for HIV.
So how often should people get tested?
Well, that all depends on what you're up to. So we've talked quite a bit about sex and things tonight, but ultimately, it should be part of your well-being. But if you think at any point you've been at risk, then you should take a test. And that's our advice to you, really. I think it's the most important thing you can do.
And where would people find the George House Trust?
GHT.org.uk, you can find all the information. There is information about testing on there as well, and we're compassionate to our partners like LGBT Foundation, who do loads of work around that.
Excellent. Darren, thank you so much for your time today. It's such an important organisation.
Absolutely.
It really is. Just to quickly sidestep, next week's show, we are reaching out for a bit of love, everybody, a bit of love. So careful. So if anybody out there is in love, everybody, yes, and you fancy doing a little bit of something special, maybe asking a certain question, then please get in touch with us. Reaching out for a little bit of love. Have we got everybody in now? Let me just do a register check. Tony Cooper, are you there?
Good evening.
Austin-Behan, are you there?
Love is in the air.
Owain,
everywhere and all around.
Owain, did I get it right?
You got it right. You got it right.
You did.
Are you there?
Yes. Yes, I'm good, darling. Loud and clear.
Daniel Brocklebank, are you there?
Hello.
Yes, there he is. Lovely. And Annie Wallace, are you there?
Yes,
I'm always here.
Yes.
And Darren from the George House Trust, you're obviously there. You've got your own space on our screen there, Flower. All in your little lonesome. I want to go back. I want to go back a good few years. And I want you to tell me just one word from each of you, and we'll work our way across. So, Tony, you'll be first. How proud you felt when you found the real you? Tony.
Excited.
Excited. Ah, it's a good word, isn't it? Carl?
Release from a pressure cooker.
That's not one word, but that'll do. And Owain?
I think relieved. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What about you, Daniel? Yeah.
What, relieved? I was going to say exactly the same thing. Yes.
There you are. It's always good to get relieved. Annie Wallace, finding the true you. How did that feel for you?
Nervous.
Yeah. And Darren?
Happy.
Amazing. So, coming out should be an easy thing, shouldn't it? Discuss. Who wants to go first?
No.
Why should it not be an easy thing?
Well, it depends. It depends on so many factors.
Yeah? Go on, such as?
And it should also be personal choice and personal decision rather than being made for you. You know, from my experience, being outed and being told about what it was ended my career of 22 years. So that should have been my choice, not someone else's.
I think that's the big thing where I say no. It shouldn't be easy, because I think it's a rite of passage. It's certainly one that I missed out on. But coming out, it should be easy to your friends and family with total acceptance. But I think that having a bit of fight in you to the rest of the world actually makes you stronger.
Yeah. I think there's an interesting point about the fact that I was working on a presentation for something tomorrow for LGBT History Month, and every day you're still coming out. You come out at the barbers, you come out, when it's like, oh, you got a wedding ring on. Somebody says, what's your missus called? Sorry, gay. All the time. So you're always coming out every single day, never stops.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what? I had that well, we all do, don't we? We all kind of come out every day, as you say, but we've recently moved. And I remember telling Aaron, my husband, oh, we're going to have to meet the neighbors and, come out to them potentially and tell them who we are and, that we're a couple. And it is kind of bonkers that you have to do that. But I think we're a long way away from that, not being a thing.
Do you all share that it's still perhaps a little bit awkward to have to explain? Well, not to have to explain, but in a normal situation, do you feel yourself that it is awkward explaining to somebody? Should you have to explain to somebody what you do?
For me personally, I probably use it as an advantage, and I sort of do it in a way that do you know what? This is who we are, and I am proud of who I am. So the issue, if you have an issue, is your issue, not my issue.
I think for me, it's not the coming out every day. It's the ridiculous questions. I mean, and Annie will relate to this. It's having done so much work with the trans community over the years. It's as a gay man, you get into that inappropriate conversation at some point, whether it's your female friend or whatever. Are you the giver or the taker? Are you the top or the bottom? Are you the boy or the girl? And with the trans community, there's a different set of questions that always come out, and it's how can we get rid of that? Is for me the big question.
And I think Tony and Ali, Annie, I think that's a really powerful message. So I think the difference is at the moment is the fact that the trans community are going through so much rubbish at the moment. I won't swear because I don't know who's watching. But I think they're going through so much. Whereas I think as being gay or lesbian, it is so much easier right now. And I thank Russell T Davies for that for 22 years ago for what he did. And I thought that Butterfly might have been a catalyst for the trans community 2 years ago, but it doesn't seem to have worked the same way. So What we need to do is we need to get Russell T Davies to write a trans drama that will really push for trans equality. And I think that's where we need to go to make a change and make difference.
Is the trans community represented enough, Annie?
So what's that, sorry?
Is the trans community represented enough?
Oh, good heavens,
on
no. There's only about
theatre?
3 of us on screen, isn't there? I mean, there's me, and there's Ash on Emmerdale, and occasionally you see Rebecca Root. Occasionally, you've not seen Riley Carter since he was dropped from EastEnders. So there are very, very few trans actors out there. But there's many, many more doing stuff. There's many people doing great work on stage, such as Travis Alabanza and people like that. So there's a lot of stuff going on, but it's mainstream media takes things in very tippy toes, doesn't it? I mean, and also Sally and Matty, our 2 soap characters, are very, very safe. We're very unthreatening people, aren't we? And that's.
Do you think it would be a different story if we took your character out of Hollyoaks and put you into a different area? Do you think that would be a more tricky situation for your character?
I don't know. Without going into detail, Sally has been very quiet recently because she had this lovely thing where she got engaged to her childhood love, Myra McQueen, and that all fell through because Myra wasn't gay. The sum and substance of it. But Sally's busier this year, and without going into more detail, she's busier this year. And I'm hoping that this is going to open up some conversations in a wider context, which you'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Annie, can I just ask a question there? Something you've picked up on there, that when you said we're not, we're non-threatening, we're non-threatening sort of with actors. But you know what? I can honestly say, for the amount of trans people I know, I don't find any trans person threatening. And I think that's the message that needs to get across, because I've not come across that, and I'm looking at the screen and I can see that sort of this finger's going up from Tony, but it is that thing about the fact of we need proper representation, like the LGB people had back in the day. We need that from the trans community, because you are not threatening, no different from anybody else, and that's why we need to stick with you and stand with you.
Can I just say one thing to everyone? Things are slightly different with trans people because there's a very obvious visual change that happens, which gay, lesbian, bisexual people don't have to go through. And it's been a very visual society. So when someone makes a big visual change to the appearance that they present to the outside world, it does have an abrasive edge to it, certainly with the older generations. And I think Coronation Street detailed it very well when they brought the wonderful Julie Hesmondhalgh in 20 years ago to play Hayley Cropper. They made her literally this little mouse of a woman who, again, not a threatening, not the tabloid headline kind of trans person. And in many ways, that got the arguments and the situations and the problems that trans people face over in a much more straightforward way. I don't think we need to have those conversations anymore, about tax records and passports and things like that. We need to be having conversations about the Gender Recognition Act. We need to be having conversations that there are gay, lesbian, and bisexual trans people. That needs to be more spoken about now. So given how few trans people there are on television, there's an awful long way to go with this, and I'm up for it.
Your job in these soaps and in these programs, you're obviously told what type of character you're going to be. How do you go about developing the character so that it's the character that the program wants, but it's also true to yourself, Daniel? Is it there? Daniel?
Well, I mean, we don't get to choose what we say, but yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes.
Am I here? Am I there?
Yeah.
Like we don't get to choose what we say, but we do get to choose how we say it. And therefore the character builds over time. And you play a line in a certain way, and it might give the writers an idea to, for another aspect of the character. It's a bit like a game of tennis, really. But over the years, the character just builds naturally because they add more backstory and you add more nuance. So therefore, they become a rounded person. To answer your question, I don't know if you can hear me.
That must be the same. That must be the same for Owain. For doing what you're doing, to sort of obviously taking the shoes that you're filling with Diane, and to be doing the weather on BBC News Northwest. That must have been hard at first, but you have really come into your own. And I think that you've now got your own following. You've got people sending you that like back in the day, it was people used to send countdown ties. You're getting the same sort of situation that happened back then. And I think you've created your own monster in a lovely way.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for your kind words, Carl. And yeah, it was so essentially, for those who maybe aren't across the kind of backstory of my job, I was given this job following the passing of Diane Oxbury. So Diane passed away a year before I got the job on Northwest Tonight. And, she was a huge, well-known, amazing TV presenter, a lovely person. She was loved by the whole of the Northwest audience. So this is a slight sort of sidetrack here. But yeah, I did, when I was, offered the job, I did wonder how people would take me as this kind of, uber flamboyant Welsh weather presenter, and in a joking kind of fashion. I think the Welsh thing was more of an issue than anything else, to be honest, to a lot of our audience. But yeah, I suppose it's the same with anything. I'm a complete Z-lister, on the grand scheme of things. But I think that there is some baggage that comes with being on screen in any capacity, I suppose, and getting any kind of following. You kind of get some stuff along with that, don't you?
Yeah. I want to move on now. We've dealt with the past. I want to look at the future. And I know that's difficult for us all to do, but where do we go, and what's the kind of ideals for the LGBTQ community?
I'll dive in. I think as an older generation, speaking for myself, those 50 plus, we need to pull our finger out. We need to pull our finger out. We need to start teaching. We need to start teaching our history, because we've not been great at it. We haven't. And there's a whole generation, certainly of my teenage friends, that are no longer with us. And we, like I said, we need to teach our history, and it's down to us to start teaching it, and we need to do it quick.
Carl, should it be in the curriculum?
Pardon?
Should it be on the curriculum?
I firmly believe it should be on the curriculum. I think it should be. I think that we need to have, here's what for you. When I was Lord Mayor, 2016-17, I didn't even know about the Holocaust. And that's no disrespect to me for anything else, but I knew nothing about it because school never taught me about it. I knew nothing about the Battle of the Somme, and that was 100 years ago. And that was, you had the Pals Battalion. A lot of them people came from Manchester. And the Pals Battalion, they were the ones that died in Battle of the Somme. And it made me realise the fact that, we're told about history from 1066. Who gives up about 1066 right now? I don't care about all those things that happened then. I want to know what happened within my lifetime, my grandparents' history, and in their grandparents' history. I want to know what happened in a period that I can relate to. 1066, you might as well be talking about before Christ, for all I give a monkeys. What I would like to see, and there's something that's been playing on my mind for the last couple of years, and it's this thing that's been going on. We've been talking about the regeneration of the village in Manchester. Now, I would like to say, I actually do believe in regeneration. I believe that we've got to keep the heritage. but we've also got to move on with the times. But I'm fed up with the amount of taxi companies. I'm fed up with the amount of takeaways. I'm fed up with the amount of just bars that are there. Let's have some galleries. Let's have some bookshops. Let's have a coffee shop.
Yeah.
Let's turn it into something that it's a destination for people. Let's make it so it's something that people want to go to. I have a vision, and one thing I would like to be my legacy, and I'm saying this now because it is LGBT History Month, and also the fact that I've been thinking about this for a long time. I would like to see an LGBT museum in the heart of Manchester's gay village, and it's something that I want to. It's something that is going to be my next project that I want to make happen.
Really nice.
Annie,
go to that.
If it was on the curriculum, Annie, what would we want to learn? What would be the three main topics, maybe?
Well, I don't put it down to three, just three. I think there are things that are. Do you know what I really like is when there are timelines which are drawn up during LGBT History Month, and it shows you the significant events that have happened to LGBT people, LGBT plus people across, let's say, the last 50 or 60 years, and it's quite interesting to see that there's more there than we're told, as you say, apart from the kind of big things. Oh yes. Homosexuality was decriminalised in 1967. Okay, in Scotland, it wasn't decriminalised until 1981. And that hardly ever gets mentioned. So if you can imagine, I was a child at the time when there was no such thing as a gay bar in the town where I come from in Aberdeen, because it was still a criminalised situation. Now, most people in this country won't know that, even if they are from the LGBT community.
That's true.
So when they have a little timeline showing the major events that have happened, I think that is very accessible in these days, because people can get instant facts along there, and then they can find the information by digging deeper into hyperlink. I think the internet's a fantastic way of doing it. I'm not sure. I get what you're saying, Carl, about a museum, but I think the majority of LGBT learning will come from cyberspace because of the sheer quantity of information that is out there that has happened to us. And we've taken this next step now. The trans community, who were having such a nice time up till 2015 and have now been demonized and monstered for the past 5 years. This is an essential part of the community, and I think that it should go hand in hand. Learning centre, maybe that's a better word than museum. A learning centre with resources online, with artifacts, things like Hayley Cropper's Red Anorak that's in the People's History Museum at the moment. Things like this, the flags, the banners, the things that are constantly changing within our world. I think that's what we need to be doing. And I'm not even sure that the schools are even slightly equipped to deal with this, because there's this thing called the curriculum, and they decide what you are going to learn and what you're not going to learn. So I'm all for it. But I like the timeline idea more than anything else.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what I mean by things that people understand, especially when you're saying about when it got decriminalised in Scotland. Like, I remember when Ireland got gay marriage legalised, and a lot of people come up to me when we were in drama school and like, oh my God, Ireland has got gay marriage. And I was like, yeah, the South. Northern Ireland doesn't. Northern Ireland didn't become legal in gay marriage until January last year. And blows people's minds that's still a thing.
Yep.
Darren, do you think that some of what you do should be on a curriculum? It should be taught? I mean, surely it's just as important as sex education, isn't it?
Educate. That's the only way we're actually going to address this. And so 100%, yes, we should be talking about that in school. We should be talking about the different types of sex that people have in different types of relationships with different people when people are young, so that they understand and are equipped for the world. There is a genuine fact that because people were not taught about gay sex, that has led to HIV transmission, because people did not understand, didn't talk about protection, didn't talk about condom use in a different way other than for preventing babies, for instance. I think history has taught us one thing: educate, and start as early as we can.
And how soon do you think that this can become a reality, that curriculum can include LGBT issues? I mean, I was at school and all I can remember about history was learning about Hitler and all the stuff that came in World War II. And I know that's part of our history, but this should be included. And how soon do you think that it'll become a reality?
Schools should be doing relationship education from 2020. That was part of the government guidelines. So from 2020, sex and relationship education in the curriculum. The unfortunate thing we've got is because of the fact of COVID-19, because I was doing a load of work last year, engaging with schools and engaging with colleges and primary schools to try and see what work they were doing, to see whether they'd set up networks. I'd booked all these things in. But right now, it's all about bubbles. It's all about the fact that they can't teach this, they can't teach that. And so, unfortunately, COVID has screwed us over, if I could say it in any other way, in a way of, the way that we were supposed to be able to sort of educate young people, we've been done over by COVID in that unfortunate way.
But we need to be sorry, Belinda, we need to be getting on this now, because the people that the kids and the youth are looking up to now, like the winners of RuPaul's Drag Race UK.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Vivian, great artist. She didn't know who Alan Turing was. Not a clue.
I did not know that.
Absolutely didn't have a clue. And this is who our youth are looking up to at the moment. These are their idols. They're selling out shows everywhere. And we need to be out there making sure that they know that. It needs to be on the curriculum now. And we, certainly me, as an older generation, we need to be shouting about our history. Really,
you're right there, Tony. Because we were on a quiz the other night, Belinda, and there's people there who starred in reality programs who didn't know who Martha. She didn't know who Martha was, and it was just like, oh my god! No. And it's just like, how does this work?
Carl, can I ask a question to go back to what you were talking about earlier when you said when you were going into schools as part of your role and speaking to primary schools and different people, what was that experience like as far as the teachers were concerned and the pupils? What kind of response did you get?
Do you know what? At first I was really nervous. So I remember the first time I actually did it was Reddish Vale. It was a secondary school, and what happened was
I used to work there,
Oh, did you? What
I used to be a computer technician at Reddish Vale.
There was
Reddish Vale. That's on the shows there.
Don't even go there. I used to have a pub round the corner. And
We're all connected.
Reddish Vale.
So it was the head girl and head boy, and they were doing their citizenship badge. So what they did was they said that what they wanted to do is they invited 5 class members from each of the 5 year groups. The head girl had sort of listened to what I'd got to say somewhere else. So I was there, nervous as anything, and they've got a banner as you walk into the school, and it said about the fact of we don't appreciate hate, we don't discriminate homophobia, blah blah blah, all this sort of stuff. So I literally had 2 minutes with the head teacher. I said, right, what am I allowed to say and what can't I say? And he's like, just be completely honest. These children that you've got have been chosen from their year groups to sort of to fit in with what your talk is going to be like. So it's like, fine. And it was one of the first engagements that Simon came with me. So he was the lady mayoress. So we went in there.
You're in so much trouble.
He's watching as well, it says. So we went in there and I gave my talk, and literally I was completely open about the fact that I'd been discriminated, I'd been kicked out of the Air Force, all this sort of stuff. And what was really interesting was there was a lad on the front row. He was in the first year, and he kept when I went to questions. When someone asks questions but they don't ask a question, but they just want to know what something. So it's very much like a case of he wanted just me to know that he was there. Anyway, by about the 4th or 5th question, it was like, so when it comes to musical theatre, who do you prefer? And it changed dynamics very, very quickly. But then, and I knew where he was coming from. But then about a week later, the Lord Mayor's office got an email from this child's mother to say that how grateful she was the fact that the Lord Mayor would come into a school because they were going through a divorce. And the her and her husband, the son had come home, and they explained that why is it you find that I'm such a freak when you say that, just because I say I'm gay. We had the Lord Mayor in today and his husband, and they've got 2 dogs, and they're looking at adoption. So I'm not a freak, and it made them question the fact that the problems that they had was nothing to do with the son being gay. The problems were to do with them.
Yeah.
And that one story lived with me for my whole time. And then there was another time, and it was at Royce Crescent, and it was in Hume. Because it was a primary school, I made a point of not saying about. I gave the story, and I left the Air Force in that story rather than being kicked out. I left the Air Force, and I said, "Any questions?" And the first question was, "What was it like to be thrown out of the Air Force for being gay?" And I looked at the head teacher, and the head teacher said, "They've Googled you. They've done the homework. What can I say?" So then it opened a whole new dynamic. Do you know what? Kids don't care. Kids really want to know. Kids want to know what is going on. They're not interested in all the other stuff. It is generational, and I think what we need to do is we need to get through the 55 to 70 generation, because I think it's a 15-year gap, and this is why I think LGBTQ education at schools has to be a 15 to 20-year program. It has to be in every bit of curriculum. It has to be about educate, as you said earlier, Darren, and it has to be about part of the curriculum. And I think if we can get past that, then young people will realise the fact that, you know what, that is just part of who we are. We are all part of society. It doesn't matter whether you've got 2 mums or 2 dads. People question me now because obviously the relationship with me and Simon, with Willow and the 2 lesbian mothers that we've got, yes, it's 2 mums, 2 dads. However, how many kids have got 2 mums, 2 dads when their mum and dad split up? They've all got 2 mums and 2 dads when they're in that relationship.
Very true.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Belinda.
It's all right.
Sorry, I hope that answered your question.
For no other reason than I need a shave. Just before we go, though, from each of you, what's fantastic about being part of the LGBT community? Who wants to go first?
Unity, community.
Well, it is like being part of a special club. There is. There's a unity. There's a.
That's it. Yeah, that's what you're saying.
Oh, we're having problems with people's signal. I'm getting a bad signal in my ear as well now. We must be really bad. Go on, say again, Daniel.
Oh,
go on. We can hear you.
Well, family, unity. Can you hear me? Oh my God, it's
actually Daniel's right, and it is about family.
Yeah, it's family.
Because the thing is,
it's like being a club.
Yeah, and the good thing about being part of the LGBT community is we create our own family. We absolutely create our own family, and you know, we will walk down Canal Street, we will walk in the bars, we will slay each other, we will rip each other to bits. But anybody attacks us, and we come together very, very quickly and very cohesively, and that is our second family, and in some cases our first.
Indeed,
absolutely.
We are going to wrap it up there, but I just want to say thank you to all of you for coming on today. I think we've had a very knowledgeable hour and 32 minutes, and that's double what we normally do.
Is.
You're not getting double pay. Now, listen, each and every one of you, thank you so much. A big thank you, of course, to Carl Austin-Behan, to Tony Cooper, to our Darren all the way from the LGBT, from the GI, oh God, George
House Trust, love, George House Trust.
Thank you, Annie Wallace, and of course, Daniel Brocklebank, and Owain!
I was going to see if she got it.
Yeah, there we go.
Thank you very much, guys, for joining us.
Thank you so much. All right,
Thank
then,
you.
just before we go, everybody, we want to tell you what's coming on next week's programme. We've got a bit of Valentine's, we've got a bit of this. we go. That's what's on next week's programme.
Yes.
Double-barrelled programme next week.
double
With
barrel.
host Carol Ann Whitehead. She'll be joining us next week. In the meantime, let's just quickly have a look at some comments. Have we got some comments in today? Let's have a quick look at them. Here we go. Yes, lovely. Let's have this one. Hi from Todmorden, West Yorkshire. I was in Veerfossa when Section 28 was repealed. Lovely. I was doing voluntary work for the then LGF. At the time, yeah, great times, great times. It just shows you the times have definitely changed. Let's have another one very, very quickly. There we go. LGBTQ museum is a great idea. It's a great idea. I don't see why you couldn't have a museum.
I don't see why you couldn't.
I think it would have to be a mixture of the old and the new fandangled technology.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I think it's a great idea.
I think it's one of those things that could really bring a lot of people together.
I do.
Love it.
Hopefully there won't be a venue available to do it on Canal Street because they'll all be back busy when we get out of this situation.
God, I need a drink in a bar. I have,
You learnt a lot. I feel I've learned.
Do you know what? I've learned so much because it's like you were saying about the curriculum. I didn't learn any of this growing up. None of this stuff was in my life.
No. Not my favourite thing, but the most important thing is people need to remember that we have these events, we have these history months for a reason. It's not to bang on about it.
No.
It's to make sure people know why they're still fighting the fight, why they are where they are, and it's because of where they were. Yeah, it's as simple as that. In the meantime, each and every one of you, thanks very much for watching this week's episode of Your Manchester.